The Galactic Council thought Earth would kneel. Every prediction model, every historical archive, every artificial intelligence entrusted with calculating the future reached the same cold conclusion. Humanity would surrender within days. It always happened that way. Across 10,000 conquered civilizations, resistance had followed a familiar pattern: anger, desperation, sacrifice, then silence. The Council had perfected the science of breaking worlds long before humanity had even discovered faster-than-light travel. To them, Earth was merely another name on an endless list of civilizations destined to disappear beneath the weight of an empire that had never truly known defeat. But then, Earth went silent. Not the silence of defeat. The silence of intention. Without warning, every diplomatic frequency that had once carried desperate negotiations simply vanished. Emergency channels fell dark. Orbital communication arrays stopped transmitting. Deep space listening stations reported nothing except the quiet hiss of cosmic radiation drifting between distant stars. The Council's translators waited for surrender. Their admirals expected frantic pleas for mercy. Their politicians rehearsed speeches welcoming humanity into obedient submission. Nothing came. Hours stretched into days. The silence became heavier than any declaration of war. Inside the immense Senate sphere orbiting the Council's capital, unease quietly spread through corridors normally filled with absolute confidence. Endless holographic star maps shimmered beneath towering crystal domes, displaying Earth's tiny blue icon surrounded by hundreds of Council warships. The fleet remained in perfect formation, its weapons armed, its commanders patient. Every sensor insisted the humans were still there. Watching. Waiting. Doing something. "What are they building?" one intelligence officer whispered, his voice barely audible beneath the humming of quantum processors. No one answered. Because for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council didn't know. Far below the oceans of Earth, beyond trenches untouched by sunlight for millions of years, massive blast doors groaned open with the sound of mountains shifting. Ancient elevators descended into impossible depths where oceans gave way to vast underground chambers carved into black stone older than recorded history. Rows of dormant machines awakened one by one, their surfaces glowing with soft blue light as if recognizing voices they had not heard for generations. Dust that had settled for decades drifted into the air, illuminated by countless activation beams cutting through the darkness. Across frozen mountain ranges, hidden vaults buried beneath glaciers unlocked in synchronized precision. Beneath deserts, forests, and forgotten military bunkers, silent facilities came alive. Massive reactors hummed to life with increasing intensity, their vibrations traveling through Earth's crust like the heartbeat of a giant finally opening its eyes. Ordinary people noticed only small things. Power flickered for a fraction of a second. The ground trembled almost imperceptibly. Compasses spun without explanation. The night sky seemed different. Some looked upward and felt a strange instinct they couldn't explain, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. In orbit, the Council surveillance drones captured none of it. Their scanners searched for missiles, fleets, and weapon signatures because that was how every civilization had fought before. They never thought to search beneath humanity's feet. And while the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known stared confidently toward Earth's skies, the real answer was awakening far below the surface. By the time the Galactic Council realized humanity wasn't hiding, it was already too late. Because Earth had not spent its final hours preparing to surrender. Earth had spent them preparing to retaliate. For more than 3 centuries, the Galactic Council had called itself the Guardian of Peace. Across the spiral arms of the Milky Way, its silver banners drifted above conquered worlds, each one carrying the same elegant promise: order through unity. To young civilizations, the Council appeared almost divine. Glittering megacities floated above gas giants. Planet-wide energy shields transformed barren moons into thriving colonies. Hyperlanes stitched together thousands of inhabited systems like glowing arteries through the darkness of space. Their technology was so far beyond imagination that entire suns could be harnessed as power stations, while fleets of kilometer-long dreadnoughts crossed the galaxy in the time it took most species to watch a sunrise. Yet beneath that dazzling image lay something far colder. Peace was never offered. It was enforced. Every civilization was given the same impossible choice: submit completely to the Council's authority or be erased so thoroughly that future generations would never know they had existed. History books were rewritten. Cultures dissolved into standardized obedience. Resistance became nothing more than forgotten myths whispered by survivors too afraid to speak aloud. When humanity was finally discovered, the Council barely considered Earth worth discussing. A small blue planet circling an average yellow star. One divided species. One primitive civilization. One inevitable surrender. They looked at humanity's endless political arguments, economic rivalries, regional conflicts, and fragile alliances and reached the simplest conclusion imaginable. These people would collapse long before an invasion ever became necessary. They could not have been more wrong. Inside the United Earth Defense Initiative headquarters, hidden beneath layers of reinforced granite deep within the Swiss Alps, Commander Elena Reyes stood before an enormous holographic projection of the solar system. Every planet rotated silently in brilliant blue light while crimson icons marked the locations of incoming Council fleets. The room buzzed with quiet urgency. Officers moved between transparent displays, engineers monitored impossible streams of data, and artificial intelligences projected probability models that all ended with the same devastating outcome. Human survival probability. 3.7%. Elena stared at the number without blinking. Fear lingered in the room like invisible smoke. She could feel it in every hesitant breath. Every lowered voice. Every exhausted pair of eyes. She understood exactly what they were thinking. How do you fight an enemy that has ruled the stars longer than human civilization has existed? Her gaze shifted toward Earth floating peacefully within the hologram. From orbit, it still looked impossibly beautiful. Swirling white clouds drifted across deep blue oceans while city lights sparkled along the night side like fragile constellations. It was difficult to believe that billions of lives depended on decisions made inside this silent chamber. For a brief moment, Elena remembered looking at that same planet through the window of an orbital research station years earlier, before she became a soldier. She had seen no borders from space. No nations. No divisions. Only home. Perhaps that had always been humanity's greatest lesson. The line separating people existed only until survival demanded something greater. Status report, she asked quietly. Orbital shipyards are online. Lunar quantum forges have reached full production. Martian defense arrays remain undetected. Global unification protocols complete. Each report sounded less like military logistics. And more like pieces of a civilization awakening. Across Earth, factories that once competed against one another now manufactured identical starship components around the clock. Scientists who had spent entire careers guarding national secrets worked side by side without hesitation. Farmers, teachers, miners, astronauts, engineers, and doctors all contributed to the same impossible objective. Rival governments dissolved decades of distrust almost overnight, recognizing that history itself had reached a crossroads where politics no longer mattered. Humanity had finally discovered something stronger than fear. Purpose. Elena slowly placed both hands against the edge of the holographic table. The Council believed they were facing a fractured world. They believed Earth was weak because humans argued. Because humans disagreed. Because humans had spent centuries fighting each other. They never stopped to consider what would happen if every one of those billions suddenly chose the same side. The hidden shipyards orbiting beyond the moon continued assembling vessels unlike anything recorded in human history. Deep beneath the lunar surface, quantum forges burned brighter with every passing hour. Across the planet, countless ordinary men and women worked in silence, unaware that together they were constructing the greatest act of defiance the galaxy had ever witnessed. Humanity was no longer preparing to survive. Humanity was preparing to prove that unity forged in the shadow of extinction could become the most powerful weapon ever created. The invasion did not begin with explosions. It began with shadows. One by one, the stars above Earth vanished as colossal silhouettes emerged from hyperspace, their impossible mass bending light itself. What had been a calm night sky transformed into a ceiling of black steel stretching across the heavens. Families standing on rooftops watched in stunned silence. Children pointed upward, unable to understand why familiar constellations were disappearing. Then the first emergency alerts interrupted every screen, every radio frequency, every satellite broadcast on the planet. Unknown extrasolar fleets have entered solar space. Within minutes, the peaceful rhythm of civilization collapsed into controlled chaos. Air raid sirens echoed through cities from New York to Tokyo, from Lagos to Sao Paulo. High-speed maglev trains halted in tunnels. Commercial aircraft were diverted to emergency landing zones. Traffic froze as billions of people looked toward the skies where hundreds of alien warships hung motionless like predators studying wounded prey. Their metallic hulls reflected sunlight with a cold, almost surgical precision, while vast rings surrounding each vessel pulsed with streams of blue-white energy powerful enough to be seen from the ground. Then came the first strike. There was no thunder. No fireball. Only a pulse. A wave of invisible energy swept across Earth's orbit at the speed of light. Satellites blinked out one after another, disappearing from military displays in seconds. Navigation systems failed. Communication relays dissolved into static. Entire constellations of orbital defense platforms simply went dark, their electronics rendered lifeless before a single human weapon could be fired. Astronauts aboard research stations watched helplessly as warning lights flooded every control panel. One by one, they lost contact with home. Inside the United Earth Defense Initiative Command Center, crimson alarms illuminated Commander Elena Reyes' face. Tactical displays updated so rapidly that even the artificial intelligence struggled to keep pace. Orbital defense grid, offline. Western surveillance network, destroyed. Global communications operating at 26%. Hyperspace blockade confirmed. Every report struck like another hammer against humanity's fragile hope. Military analysts stared in disbelief as centuries of technological progress unraveled in less than 5 minutes. Every simulation they had prepared, every contingency plan, every defensive scenario, collapsed before an enemy that hadn't even fired a conventional weapon. Outside the bunker, panic spread despite desperate efforts to maintain order. Parents searched for their children. Soldiers hurried civilians toward underground shelters. Hospital generators switched to emergency power as doctors prepared for casualties that had not yet arrived. Across every continent, people embraced loved ones with the quiet understanding that tomorrow might never come. High above the atmosphere, the Galactic Council fleet remained perfectly still. They weren't attacking. Not yet. They were demonstrating power. A silent reminder that resistance was meaningless. Inside the command center, every eye turned toward Elena. Protocol demanded immediate retaliation. The admirals expected her to launch the remaining orbital fleets before they too were eliminated. Political leaders begged for action. Fighter squadrons waited with engines roaring inside hidden hangars beneath mountains and deserts. Every instinct born from generations of warfare screamed the same command. Fight. Now. Instead, Elena did something no one expected. Stand down, she said calmly. The room froze. One officer looked up in disbelief. Commander, they're disabling everything we have. I know. Our fleet is ready. I know. If we wait another hour, we may lose the opportunity to strike. Elena never raised her voice. They want us to panic. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Absolute. She looked once more at the holographic display of the solar system. Hundreds of enemy vessels surrounded Earth with mathematical precision, convinced victory had already been secured. They saw frightened defenders trapped inside a shrinking cage. They didn't notice the faint distortions beginning to ripple beyond the orbit of Mars. Tiny fluctuations. Barely measurable. Ignored as sensor interference. But Elena recognized them immediately. Phase 1 had begun. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, beneath mountain ranges, beneath deserts untouched for centuries, hidden gravitational engines awakened one after another. Their enormous cores hummed with increasing intensity, sending invisible waves through the fabric of space itself. Around the solar system, reality began to bend ever so slightly, like glass preparing to crack under unbearable pressure. The Galactic Council believed humanity had retreated because it was afraid. In truth, humanity was buying time. And while the greatest armada the galaxy had ever assembled waited patiently above Earth, convinced surrender was only hours away. The battlefield itself was quietly transforming into the deadliest trap they had ever entered. The Galactic Council believed it understood humanity. For weeks, its strategists had analyzed every intercepted transmission, every military doctrine, every chapter of recorded human history. Their supercomputers reached the same elegant conclusion: humans survived through numbers, improvised tactics, and relentless determination, but they remained technologically inferior. Against the oldest empire in the Milky Way, courage alone would only delay extinction. The Council had studied everything. Except the one secret humanity had never allowed anyone to find. Far beneath Antarctica's endless fields of ice, nearly 4 kilometers below the frozen surface where no satellite could penetrate, a chamber older than civilization itself pulsed with quiet blue light. The air carried the scent of ancient stone and ozone. Massive pillars, carved from a black crystalline material unknown to human science, stretched into darkness beyond the reach of artificial light. Strange symbols shimmered across the walls, shifting subtly as though the chamber itself were alive. Commander Elena Reyes stepped forward, her boots echoing through the impossible silence. She had visited this place only once before. Even now, it still felt unreal. At the center of the chamber floated a sphere nearly 30 meters wide, suspended without visible support. Streams of luminous energy spiraled across its surface like living veins, illuminating the frozen cavern in soft waves of silver and blue. Every few seconds, the sphere emitted a low harmonic vibration, not loud enough to hear, but powerful enough to feel deep within the chest. Years earlier, glacial drilling teams searching for climate records had accidentally uncovered the structure. At first it had been dismissed as an unusual geological formation. Then the walls reacted to human touch. Then they spoke. Not in words. In mathematics. Entire branches of physics unfolded like a language waiting to be remembered rather than learned. Equations appeared across laboratory displays faster than scientists could record them. Technologies once considered impossible suddenly became understandable. Humanity had not invented quantum gravity manipulation. It had inherited the instructions. The truth shook every government on Earth. Long before the Galactic Council had risen to power. Long before the oldest known civilizations had taken their first breath. Another species had crossed the stars. A civilization so advanced that even the Council's greatest achievements would have appeared primitive beside them. And they had vanished. Leaving behind only fragments. Fragments hidden on one insignificant blue world. The Council never found you, Elena whispered. The sphere answered. Its surface rippled like liquid glass before countless beams of light surrounded her. Images flooded the chamber, not projected onto screens, but directly into the minds of everyone present. Entire galaxies bloomed into existence. Stars were born and extinguished in seconds. Fleets unlike anything humanity had imagined crossed impossible distances without engines. Then came darkness. War. Not between planets. Between realities. The ancient civilization had not been destroyed. It had chosen to disappear, sealing away the one technology capable of rewriting hyperspace itself before it could consume existence. The Council had unknowingly spent thousands of years building its empire atop the remnants of forgotten knowledge. They believed hyperspace was a road. The ancients had designed it as a living structure. And humanity. Humanity had discovered how to touch its foundations. Synchronization complete, announced the artificial intelligence quietly. Around the sphere, hundreds of quantum processors reached perfect alignment. The chamber brightened. The ancient construct awakened fully for the first time in millions of years. A calm voice echoed through the cavern, not mechanical, not organic, but something impossibly older than both. Authorized successor species detected. Every scientist froze. Every soldier stared in silence. The voice continued. Defensive protocols transferred. Suddenly, thousands of holographic star maps burst into existence around Elena, each one displaying invisible pathways woven beneath the fabric of hyperspace itself. They were not roads. They were routes. Living structures connecting every star in the galaxy. Elena understood everything in a single breathtaking instant. She had never intended to defeat the Council through superior firepower. That would have been impossible. She intended to remove the very foundation beneath their empire. The hidden gravitational engines awakening across the solar system were never weapons. They were keys. Keys designed to reshape hyperspace into a prison no invading fleet could escape. Far above Earth, the Galactic Council continued waiting with supreme confidence, convinced humanity's silence was born from fear. None of its admirals realized that the true battle had already been decided, not among the stars, but beneath a continent of ancient ice, where a forgotten intelligence had chosen its final heirs. And for the first time in galactic history, the hunters had become the ones walking willingly into a trap. The command was only one word. Now. Commander Elena Reyes spoke it so quietly that, for an instant, it seemed impossible such a simple word could alter the fate of an entire galaxy. Yet the moment it left her lips, every hidden system humanity had spent decades building awakened in perfect synchronization. Across the solar system, buried gravitational engines roared to life beneath oceans, deserts, mountains, and frozen wastelands. Their power surged through the ancient quantum network inherited from the forgotten civilization, sending invisible waves racing outward faster than light. Space itself began to tremble. At first, the Galactic Council noticed nothing unusual. Their sensors reported only minor fluctuations, insignificant distortions within local hyperspace. Routine interference. Harmless anomalies. Fleet commanders dismissed the warnings with practiced confidence, believing Earth's defenses had finally collapsed into desperation. Then the stars moved. Not physically. Visually. Constellations bent as if reflected through rippling water. Brilliant lines of light spread across the solar system like cracks racing through glass, connecting planets, moons, and hidden quantum beacons in an immense geometric lattice. The sun itself erupted into streams of radiant energy that spiraled outward without heat or flame, bathing every ship in shimmering waves of impossible blue-white light. Inside the flagship Judicator Prime, alarms erupted across every command console. Hyperspace integrity dropping. Jump drives failing. Navigation collapse spreading through the fleet. The bridge, once calm with absolute authority, descended into chaos. Senior admirals shouted conflicting orders while tactical officers desperately recalculated escape vectors. Artificial intelligences that had guided Council fleets flawlessly for centuries suddenly returned impossible equations, displaying error after error as reality itself refused to obey familiar physical laws. Emergency jump. Nothing happened. Again. Nothing. For the first time in living memory. The Galactic Council was trapped. The invisible highways of hyperspace, the foundation of their empire, their commerce, their military dominance, had folded inward like a collapsing web. Every attempted jump drove ships deeper into an expanding maze of fractured dimensions. Entire battlegroups vanished from sensors, suspended between layers of distorted space where neither forward nor backward existed. Panic spread faster than any weapon. Above Earth, vessels kilometers long drifted helplessly, their engines screaming against physics that no longer answered them. Only then did humanity strike. The dark side of the moon shimmered. Massive armored hangar doors split open across ancient craters, revealing fleets that had remained hidden beneath kilometers of lunar rock. Sleek black warships emerged in disciplined formations, their hulls reflecting distant starlight as they accelerated silently into battle. From concealed shipyards orbiting beyond the moon, hundreds more joined them. Mars activated defense platforms buried beneath its rust-colored deserts. Asteroid colonies unfolded concealed missile arrays. Every hidden asset humanity possessed revealed itself within minutes. Yet something surprised the Council even more. The humans did not attack in rage. They attacked with precision. Every volley targeted engines instead of crews. Every strike disabled weapons instead of destroying ships. Electromagnetic lances severed power grids. Quantum disruptors immobilized reactors. Boarding vessels crossed the battlefield under carefully coordinated cover, capturing command bridges one after another without unnecessary slaughter. Human pilots flew through collapsing gravitational storms knowing many would never return. Some sacrificed their own ships to shield evacuation transports. Others deliberately entered unstable dimensional fractures to rescue civilians trapped aboard drifting stations. None hesitated. Not because they believed they would survive, but because someone else might. Commander Elena Reyes watched the battle unfold from Earth's command center, her expression unreadable despite the storm of reports flooding every display. Enemy flagship disabled. 23 surrender signals received. Oppressed client worlds broadcasting support. Across the galaxy, countless civilizations witnessed the impossible through intercepted transmissions. Species that had spent generations living beneath the Council's rule stared in disbelief as the invincible empire faltered before the very world it had mocked as primitive. One by one, occupied systems began shutting down Council communication relays. Garrisons surrendered. Resistance movements emerged from hiding. Hope spread faster than fear ever had. The Council had expected humanity to answer oppression with vengeance. Instead, humanity answered with restraint. Because victory was never measured by how many enemies were destroyed. It was measured by how many futures were saved. And as the last invincible flagship surrendered beneath the light of Earth's sun, one undeniable truth echoed across every inhabited star system. The Galactic Council had mastered the art of ruling through fear. Humanity had mastered something infinitely more powerful. The courage to win without becoming the monster it had defeated. The war ended with a silence unlike any the galaxy had ever known. Not the silence of fear. Not the silence of extinction. But the quiet that follows a storm so immense that even the stars seem to pause in remembrance. Across the solar system, the shattered remains of the Galactic Council's once invincible armada drifted peacefully in stable orbit, their weapons powered down, their banners lowered for the first time in recorded history. Rescue ships from Earth moved methodically through the vast debris fields, recovering survivors without asking whether they had once been friend or foe. Human medics treated wounded alien soldiers beside exhausted Earth pilots, while engineers stabilized crippled vessels that only hours earlier had threatened to erase humanity forever. Many of the captured officers could not understand what they were witnessing. Why? One elderly council admiral asked quietly as a human doctor sealed the burns across his arm. You won. You have every reason to hate us. The doctor simply smiled beneath his visor before returning to his work. Maybe. But hatred built the empire you served. We're trying something different. The admiral lowered his eyes, unable to answer. Far beyond Earth, a message began spreading through hyperspace, not carried by warships, but by ordinary civilian transmitters. World after world received the same simple invitation. You are free. No demands. No conditions. No occupation. Systems that had lived beneath Council authority for centuries stared in disbelief before celebrations erupted across thousands of planets. Ancient resistance movements emerged from hidden shelters where generations had lived and died waiting for a day they believed would never come. Monuments honoring forgotten heroes were uncovered from beneath abandoned cities. Children who had never known anything except imperial rule looked toward the stars with something unfamiliar. Choice. Weeks later, representatives from liberated civilizations crossed the galaxy toward one destination. Earth. The skies above the blue planet filled with vessels unlike any gathering in history. Elegant crystalline ships glided beside rugged mining freighters. Organic living starcraft floated alongside machines older than human civilization itself. Species that had once feared speaking to one another now arrived together, not as conquerors seeking tribute, but as equals carrying hope. Inside the former command chamber of the Galactic Council, now stripped of its imperial banners, Commander Elena Reyes stood before thousands of delegates assembled beneath the immense crystal dome. The chamber that had once dictated the fate of entire civilizations had become astonishingly quiet. Many expected Elena to claim the vacant throne. She refused. Many urged humanity to establish a new empire. She declined. Instead, she looked across the countless faces gathered before her, different worlds, different languages, different histories, and remembered the lesson humanity had learned during its darkest hour. Power was never the destination. It was the test. If we replace one empire with another, Elena said, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber, then everything we fought for dies here today. Silence answered her. Not disagreement. Understanding. One by one, delegates rose to their feet. Not in obedience. In respect. Outside, Earth's oceans shimmered beneath the rising sun while children played beneath skies no longer shadowed by invading fleets. Construction ships departed daily, carrying food, medicine, and engineers to worlds devastated by centuries of oppression. Human soldiers who had survived the impossible traded their armor for tools, helping rebuild cities they had never seen before. The ancient quantum intelligence beneath Antarctica quietly returned to dormancy, its final purpose fulfilled after waiting millions of years for a civilization worthy of its trust. Commander Elena Reyes often stood alone beneath the night sky after the work was done. She would look toward the countless stars stretching beyond imagination and think about how close everything had come to ending. Humanity had not been the strongest. It had not been the oldest. It had not possessed the greatest technology until fate placed forgotten knowledge in its hands. What had truly changed history was something far simpler. When the moment arrived, humanity chose unity over division. Compassion over revenge. Hope over fear. And that choice echoed farther than any weapon ever could. Centuries later, young civilizations studying the history of the Great Liberation would ask their teachers the same question. Why did the Galactic Council fall? The answer was always the same. Because they mistook kindness for weakness. And they forgot the oldest truth in the universe. The species willing to protect others with everything it has is the one that can never truly be conquered.